I used to set ambitious goals every January, write them down with genuine commitment, feel the motivation surge through me like electricity. This time would be different. This time, I'd follow through. By March, the goals were forgotten. By June, I couldn't remember what I'd written. By December, I felt the familiar disappointment that preceded the next round of ambitious January promises. This cycle repeated for years. Not because I lacked intelligence, not because I lacked desire, not because the goals were wrong. Something else was missing that I couldn't identify despite constant self-reflection. I watched others achieve what I kept failing to achieve. They didn't seem smarter or more talented. They didn't have advantages I lacked. Yet they made steady progress while I spun in circles year after year. The difference became visible only after I stopped looking at what they accomplished and started observing how they operated. The successful ones weren't succeeding through superior willpower or motivation. They were succeeding through something far more mundane and far more powerful. They had structure, repeatable processes that guided their behavior regardless of how they felt on any given day, systems that turned good intentions into consistent actions. The one thing that makes success so hard until you fix it is the absence of structure that makes consistency possible. Everything else, the goals, the motivation, the knowledge, amounts to nothing without the framework that converts these elements into reliable behavior. Today I'm showing you what this actually means, how to build the specific systems that create consistency across every area that matters. Why the gap between where you are and where you want to be is almost always a structure gap rather than a capability gap. This understanding changed everything for me. It can change everything for you. Let me start by challenging what you probably believe success actually means. Most people define success through outcomes, money accumulated, status achieved, goals reached, the finish lines crossed that prove you've won at whatever game you are playing. This definition creates problems that most people never examine. Chasing outcomes often produces emptiness even when you reach them. The achievement arrives and the feeling of success lasts days or weeks before fading into a new hunger for the next outcome. The destination reached becomes the starting point for another journey toward another destination. The satisfaction never sustains. I've met wealthy people who feel like failures, accomplished people who see only what they haven't accomplished, successful people by every external measure who experience no internal sense of success. The outcome definition fails because outcomes are largely outside your control. You can do everything right and still not achieve what you're pursuing. Circumstances intervene, timing matters, other people's decisions affect your results. Tying your sense of success to factors you can't control guarantees frustration. A more useful definition focuses on something different. Success is pursuing goals that genuinely matter to you through actions you control, while maintaining balance across the areas that constitute a full life. This definition shifts focus from destinations to journeys, from outcomes to behaviors, from single achievements to comprehensive flourishing. A truly successful life includes work that engages you, health that enables everything else, relationships that provide meaning and connection, financial stability that removes stress, personal growth that expands capability, not one of these at the expense of others, all of them in proportion that suits your values. The enjoyment during the process matters as much as reaching any particular result. Someone grinding miserably toward a goal they might achieve someday isn't succeeding, they're suffering with uncertain payoff. This reframing changes what you're actually trying to build. Not a collection of accomplishments, a way of living that produces accomplishment alongside satisfaction, alongside balance. Understanding what success actually means leads naturally to understanding how it's actually produced. Success comes from repeated actions over time, not single heroic efforts, not occasional bursts of intensity, the compounding effect of consistent behavior in the right directions. This seems obvious when stated directly. It's remarkably non-obvious in practice. Most people's efforts are inconsistent. They work intensely, then not at all. They focus on one area while neglecting others. They start initiatives they don't sustain long enough to produce results. The right actions done regularly increase the probability of reaching goals. Notice the word probability. Even consistent action doesn't guarantee outcomes, but consistent action dramatically improves odds, while inconsistent action nearly guarantees failure. A well-rounded life requires actions across multiple areas, not just obsessive focus on one dimension. The person who builds career success while destroying their health hasn't succeeded. The person who accumulates wealth while losing meaningful relationships has won a hollow victory. Mindset plays a role in sustainability, being flexible rather than rigidly attached to specific outcomes, enjoying the process rather than suffering through it for hypothetical future reward. These mental orientations make it possible to continue long enough for compounding to work, but mindset alone isn't sufficient. The missing element that connects good intentions to consistent behavior is the core insight I want you to understand. Structured approaches make following through dramatically easier. Instead of relying on mood or motivation, predefined processes guide behavior. The decision about what to do was made in advance when you were thinking clearly. The execution happens according to that decision, rather than according to whatever you feel like in the moment. Having a repeatable framework increases reliability. You're not inventing your approach fresh each day. You're following a pattern that has already proven effective. The mental load of deciding drops. The consistency of executing rises. Systems make it more likely to stay consistent, balanced, and engaged. They address the fundamental problem that undermines most attempts at improvement. Human beings don't behave consistently without external structure supporting consistent behavior. Let me be specific about what a system actually is, because the word gets used vaguely. A system is a structured sequence of steps designed to produce a result. Not complicated, not mysterious. A defined process you follow that increases the probability of achieving what you're trying to achieve. Systems can be routines that structure your day, checklists that ensure you don't miss important elements, workflows that move tasks through stages to completion, processes that standardize how you handle recurring situations. The power of systems comes from removing guesswork. Instead of wondering what to do, you know what to do because you've already decided. Instead of figuring out your approach each time, you follow an approach you've already established. Systems turn complex goals into manageable, repeatable actions. The goal of getting healthy becomes a morning routine and meal planning process. The goal of building wealth becomes automatic transfers and investment allocation. The goal of maintaining relationships becomes scheduled contact and planned activities. The translation from abstract aspiration to concrete behavior is what systems provide. Without that translation, goals remain wishes that never convert into action. High-stakes fields demonstrate how important structure is when consequences really matter. Industries where failure creates serious consequences depend heavily on structured procedures. Aviation, medicine, nuclear power, military operations. These fields can't afford the inconsistency that casual approaches produce. Professionals in these fields follow predefined steps rather than improvising. Surgeons use checklists before operations. Pilots use checklists before takeoff. The checklists don't insult their expertise. The checklists ensure that expertise translates into consistent execution. Even highly experienced individuals still rely on structured processes. The surgeon who has performed 1,000 procedures still reviews the checklist. The pilot who has logged 10,000 hours still follows the pre-flight sequence. Consistency and safety come from following proven frameworks. The experienced professional knows that human attention is fallible, that memory fails, that even experts make avoidable mistakes without structure supporting their execution. These high-stakes fields developed their reliance on structure through painful learning. Accidents were analysed, failures were examined. The consistent finding was that structure prevented errors that individual capability alone could not prevent. Your life may not involve surgical procedures or aircraft, but the principle translates. Consistency in any domain benefits from structure that doesn't depend on you being at your best every moment. Systems reduce the effort required to behave consistently over time. Building structure requires effort at the beginning. Designing routines, creating processes, establishing patterns. The initial investment is real and may feel burdensome, but once structure is in place, it lowers the mental and physical load needed to act. The decision has already been made. The process has already been established. Execution follows paths already carved rather than requiring fresh path cutting each time. The work gets smoother and more automatic. The morning routine that required conscious effort initially becomes natural. The financial process that demanded attention becomes automatic. The relationship maintenance that felt forced becomes habitual. Decision fatigue reduces as fewer decisions need to be made in the moment. Each decision depletes limited daily capacity. Each decision removed through pre-established structure preserves that capacity for decisions that genuinely require it. Efficiency increases as the friction between intention and action decreases. The person with structure converts intention into behavior with minimal resistance. The person without structure faces resistance at every conversion point. The contrast with unstructured approaches reveals why so many people struggle. Random, inconsistent effort produces little to no progress. The workout that happens sometimes, the savings that happen when something is left over, the relationship contact that happens when you happen to think of it. These sporadic behaviors don't compound into results. Going with the flow often feels good in the moment. No constraints, no obligations, no rigid structure limiting freedom. This feels like self-care or wisdom or relaxation. But going with the flow produces results that also flow directly away from your goals. Without intentional direction, behavior follows paths of least resistance. Those paths rarely lead toward what you actually want. Without a clear approach, results are unpredictable and slow. Some weeks are productive, some weeks are wasted, some months show progress, some months show regression. The randomness prevents the compounding that consistent action would produce. Following a structured plan leads to measurable improvement that unstructured effort cannot match. The gym membership that includes a specific program produces results. The gym membership used randomly produces frustration. Same facility, same equipment, different structure, different outcomes. In business contexts, this contrast becomes even more visible. Organized workflows outperform improvisation consistently. The salesperson with a structured process outperforms the salesperson who wings each conversation. The manager with established procedures outperforms the manager who handles each situation fresh. Having clear steps for tasks like selling or communicating improves results. The structure doesn't constrain authentic interaction. It ensures that key elements don't get missed. It provides framework within which genuine human connection occurs more reliably. Preparation for common situations leads to better outcomes. The objections you'll hear, the questions you'll face, the challenges that recur. Having prepared responses enables better handling than improvising each time. Consistency in execution increases success rates across domains. Whether you're closing deals, building relationships, creating content, or managing projects, the structured approach outperforms the unstructured approach. Now let me show you the specific systems that create success across the areas that matter most. The first system involves structured goal planning that provides clear direction. Clear direction is essential for progress. Without knowing where you're heading, any path seems acceptable. Random wandering replaces purposeful movement. Energy disperses across possibilities rather than concentrating on priorities. Without a defined approach to goal setting, people drift between ideas and quit easily. This week's enthusiasm becomes next week's abandoned project. The shiny new opportunity distracts from the important ongoing work. Nothing reaches completion because attention never stays long enough. Breaking long-term vision into smaller time-based targets increases clarity dramatically. The 10-year vision becomes the 3-year milestone, becomes the 1-year goal, becomes the quarterly target, becomes the monthly objective, becomes the weekly intention, becomes the daily action. This cascade connects today's behavior to tomorrow's achievement. Without the cascade, the connection remains invisible and motivation evaporates. Regular reflection and planning keeps efforts aligned with priorities. Weekly review of what happened and what needs to happen. Monthly assessment of progress toward goals. Quarterly examination of whether the goals themselves still reflect your priorities. The system might include annual planning sessions where you establish yearly goals across each life area. Monthly sessions where you set monthly targets that support yearly goals. Weekly sessions where you plan the week based on monthly targets. Daily sessions where you identify the day's priorities. The specific structure matters less than having structure. The process you'll follow beats the process you won't follow. Find an approach that fits your circumstances and implement it consistently. The second system involves managing your time with intention. Time is your most limited resource. Money can be earned, energy can be restored, attention can be trained, time can only be spent. Once spent, it's gone regardless of how wisely or foolishly it was used. Most people underestimate how little usable time they actually have. The week sounds like a long time until you subtract sleep, commuting, obligations, transitions, and the countless small-time losses that fragment remaining hours. Planning in advance helps ensure important tasks get done. The calendar filled with intentions doesn't create more time. It ensures that available time goes to priorities rather than getting consumed by urgencies and distractions. Prioritizing key actions prevents overload. You cannot do everything. Accepting this limitation and choosing what you will do enables completion rather than perpetual partial progress across too many fronts. Reviewing how time is spent allows continuous improvement. Where did the hours actually go last week? The answer usually differs from your assumptions. The tracking reveals leakage you didn't know existed. The awareness enables adjustment. The system might include time blocking where your calendar shows what you're doing when, regular tracking that reveals where time actually goes, review sessions that assess alignment between time allocation and priorities, boundaries that protect important time from interruption. Time management isn't about squeezing more activity into hours. It's about ensuring the activities that matter get the time they require, while lower priority activities get whatever remains. The third system involves treating health as the foundation everything else builds upon. Physical and mental well-being affect every other area of life. Energy levels determine what you can accomplish. Mental clarity determines the quality of your thinking. Physical capability determines what activities are available to you. Without structure, habits around sleep, food, and activity become inconsistent. You sleep when convenient rather than according to patterns that optimize rest. You eat whatever is available rather than what supports your function. You exercise when motivated rather than according to schedule that ensures regularity. This inconsistency produces inconsistent health. Some weeks you feel good, some weeks you feel terrible. The variation makes everything else harder because your baseline keeps shifting. Simple routines remove the need to constantly decide what to do. The morning routine that includes movement. The meal pattern that doesn't require daily invention. The sleep schedule that ensures adequate rest. These structures create consistency that willpower alone cannot maintain. Tracking progress can help refine habits over time. What you measure improves, because measurement creates awareness, and awareness enables adjustment. Sleep quality tracked reveals patterns. Food recorded reveals tendencies. Exercise logged reveals consistency or its absence. Good health multiplies effectiveness in all other pursuits. The person with energy accomplishes more than the person exhausted. The person thinking clearly makes better decisions than the person foggy. Every investment in health pays dividends across every other domain. The system might include protected sleep windows that rarely get violated, meal preparation that removes daily decisions about food, exercise schedules that don't depend on motivation, recovery practices that ensure you're operating from restored capacity. The fourth system involves maintaining relationships with intention rather than accident. Strong relationships don't sustain themselves automatically. Connections that aren't maintained fade. Relationships that are neglected weaken. The people who matter most can become strangers through inattention alone. Regular, planned interactions help maintain connection. Not just the interactions that happen to occur. The interactions you deliberately create because you recognize the relationship requires investment. Scheduling time for important people prevents neglect. The spouse you see daily needs intentional quality time, not just shared proximity. The parents you don't see need regular contact that doesn't wait until you happen to think of it. The friends you value need connection that doesn't depend on their initiative. Small, consistent actions strengthen long-term bonds. The text that says you're thinking of them. The call that doesn't wait for special occasions. The presence at events that matter to them. These small investments compound into relationship depth that sporadic grand gestures cannot match. Being intentional replaces forgetfulness and inconsistency. You don't contact people less because you care less. You contact them less because life is busy and attention flows elsewhere without structure directing it. The system might include scheduled calls with specific people on specific intervals, calendar blocks for quality time with immediate family, recurring check-ins with friends you want to maintain connection with, annual or quarterly rituals that gather important people. The fifth system involves automating financial behavior so good decisions happen without ongoing effort. Without structure, spending tends to consume everything. Income arrives, expenses occur. Whatever remains at the end of the month, which is usually nothing, is theoretically available for saving. This approach fails because it depends on money being left over rather than ensuring money is allocated properly. Planning where money goes in advance leads to better outcomes. The allocation decision is made when you're thinking clearly rather than when you're facing tempting spending opportunities. The structure implements decisions that match your values rather than decisions that match your impulses. Automation removes emotional decision-making. The transfer to savings happens automatically. The investment contribution happens automatically. The bill payment happens automatically. The system operates without requiring you to feel like executing it. Consistency in saving and investing builds long-term stability. Not dramatic occasional moves. Regular, reliable behavior that compounds over years. The system that moves money toward your goals every month outperforms the intention to move money that never converts into action. Predefined allocation creates control and reduces stress. Instead of wondering whether you can afford something, you know what's allocated to different purposes. Instead of feeling guilty about spending, you spend confidently within categories you've established. The system might include automatic transfers on payday before you can spend the money, percentage-based allocation across categories, regular review of whether allocations match priorities, barriers between serious money and accessible spending money. Understanding why these systems matter requires understanding human nature honestly. People don't always act logically in the moment. The rational understanding of what you should do doesn't always translate into doing it. Knowledge and behavior disconnect in ways that frustrate everyone who has ever failed to follow through on something they knew they should do. Decisions fluctuate based on mood and energy. When you feel good, ambitious actions seem easy. When you feel depleted, even small actions seem overwhelming. The same person makes different decisions at different moments based on internal states that vary constantly. Systems protect against impulsive or inconsistent choices. The decision made during structure establishment was made thoughtfully. The execution happens according to that decision, rather than according to moment-to-moment impulse. Pre-planned actions override emotional variability. You don't feel like exercising. The schedule says you exercise now. The structure wins because you've decided in advance that the structure wins. The daily negotiation with yourself about what to do is settled by reference to decisions already made. This isn't about eliminating emotion or becoming robotic. It's about recognizing that emotions are unreliable guides for consistent behavior. The emotions can exist. They just don't control actions that structure has already determined. The principle that connects all these specific systems is straightforward. The goal is reducing reliance on motivation because motivation is unreliable. Some days you're motivated, some days you're not. Waiting for motivation means acting only when internal states happen to cooperate. Turning important behaviors into default actions removes the dependency on motivation. The default happens without requiring desire. The default happens because that's what happens. The decision was made at structure level rather than moment level, designing life. So progress happens with less ongoing effort is the ultimate aim. Not life without effort. Life where effort is channeled by structure into consistent behavior rather than dissipated through constant reinvention. Consistency becomes easier when decisions are already made. Each decision in the moment is an opportunity for the wrong choice. Each decision removed through pre-commitment is a decision that can't be made wrongly. The successful don't have superior willpower. They've reduced how much willpower their lives require by building structures that guide behavior automatically. The underlying message I want to leave you with is this. The gap between struggling and succeeding is often structure, not talent, not resources, not opportunity. Structure that makes consistent behavior possible. People fail not because they lack ability, but because they lack a repeatable approach. They try hard and inconsistently. They mean well and don't follow through. They know what to do and don't do it regularly. The missing element isn't more information about what to do. The missing element is structure that converts knowing into doing reliably. Designing your life intentionally leads to better outcomes across all areas. The person who has structured goal setting makes progress toward meaningful targets. The person who has structured time management accomplishes priorities. The person who has structured health routines maintains the foundation. The person who has structured relationship maintenance sustains connection. The person who has structured finances builds stability. None of these structures are complicated. All of them are implementable. The barrier isn't understanding, the barrier is doing. And the doing becomes possible when you recognize that structure is the answer. Not more motivation, not more information, not more accountability partners or apps or tools, structure. Start with one system. The area where lack of structure is currently creating the most pain. Design a simple structure that addresses that area. implement it until it becomes habitual, then add the next system. The accumulation of these systems creates a life that produces success without depending on conditions that vary day to day. The outcomes you want become more probable, because the actions that produce them become more consistent. I spent years failing, because I thought success required something I couldn't access. More discipline, more motivation, more something that seemed outside my nature. The realization that structure creates consistency, and consistency creates success, changed everything. I didn't need to become someone different. I needed to build scaffolding that supported consistent behavior from the person I already was. That scaffolding is available to anyone. The systems I described aren't complicated. They require only the decision to implement them and the patience to let them establish. Write in the comments which area of your life most needs structure right now. Where is inconsistency creating the most cost? Sometimes naming the gap begins the process of filling it. Share this with someone who keeps trying and struggling. Someone whose efforts don't convert into results despite genuine intention. The structure insight might be exactly what they need to break the pattern. Success isn't reserved for the naturally disciplined. It's available to anyone who builds structure that creates consistency, regardless of natural discipline. The one thing that makes success so hard until you fix it is believing you need something other than structure. You don't. You need systems that turn intentions into defaults. Build those systems. Watch consistency emerge, watch results follow. That's how success actually happens. Now you know, start building.